You alright, folks? Welcome back. And firstly, sorry if I sound a little weird. I'm recording this really early in the morning and post-cold, hence why it's taken so long to get out after the last one. And if you've not seen the previous videos, go and have a ganders. You'll probably have a better understanding of where my head's at with this process. I did want it out a bit sooner, but as I said, I've had a god-awful cold, so yay for me. But it also gave me more time to ruminate on my choice, and I'm pretty confident I've made the right decisions for me. In the last video, I cut Hunter, Priest, and Warrior immediately, so I won't rehash what I said there. It still stands. However, one helpful chap in the comments did point out that since it'll be the final patch of the expansion, the macros for Warrior aren't likely to explode every 5 minutes. That is very true, however, thinking about it still makes me a tiny bit itchy, so Warrior will remain in the bin. First to join Warrior, Hunter, and Priest in the alt-only department is sadly the Warlock. As I said before, Destruction is my favourite of the 3 specs on offer in Cataclysm, but it is very likely to be the worst performing, and as such the pressure will be there to go Affliction or Demo. And whilst I like Affliction, Demo not so much, and ultimately the big draw for me for this class is Destruction, so I'm not going to commit to a class when the main reason I want to play it is a no-no. It's not going to happen, so bye-bye Warlock, unfortunately. Next to be given a front row seat on the bench is the Druid. At the end of the last video, I said there were some classes that I expected to absolutely love, but ended up being pretty indifferent towards, and that there were some that just grabbed me by the ghoulies and maintained a worryingly firm grip. Sadly for Druids, they are in the former camp. I really thought I'd love Druid, and the thing is, I didn't dislike it one bit. It was all perfectly functional, it just doesn't excite me. You can't go wrong with this class, make no mistake, all the specs will see action and be pretty decent, but yeah, I just wasn't drawn in. Nothing about the specs elicited the reaction you'd want from a main character, and they just weren't overly memorable in my opinion. Then we have the Shaman. The Shaman. My GM was rather surprised when I said that I wasn't that fussed on Shaman because, fun fact, I have kind of been raving about Cataclysm Elemental since we were in Naxxramas, and it is gonna be fantastic, but I have just played it a lot these last couple of years, and there are other classes and specs that are drawing me in, and whilst I could play a Shaman and play it well, I do kind of recognise that I am just a bit bored with it and I want to try something different. It's definitely going to be weird for me for a couple of reasons, because I have played my Shaman a hell of a lot since the TBC pre-patch. Every week, since the day the pre-patch went live, I've logged onto that character and done some form of content. And this will be the first time since his inception that he'll just be twiddling his thumbs and not be involved. It'll also be weird to not have the Kareth name on my screen, which is really peculiar, because that name has become me. I am Kareth, or just plain old Carrot. I will admit, I like being Carrot. It's a silly name, but I do kind of like it. And one you might find surprising based on what I said about the class in the previous video, Paladin. Yes, the Paladin has not made the cut. Why is that? Well, again, like the Shaman, it kind of boils down to my history. The Paladin was the first character I made when Classic launched. It was my first 60. I saw my first raggy kill on him. There's a very special place in my heart for Paladin. There really is. And in TBC, it was the only other character I raided on apart from my Shaman. And in Wrath, he was my de facto mess-around character. And I've played all 3 specs at one point or another. And as of this video going up, I'm only a couple of days away from getting my Shadowmourne. I've had a really amazing journey with my Paladin. He's seen everything from Molten Core through to ICC, but it is going to be hard to top getting a Legendary. And whilst I love the specs, Ret and Prot specifically, and would play them without issue and really enjoy it, I just want to move on to something else because I've achieved a lot on my Paladin and there's nothing I really want to prove to myself. I'm not bored with the class by any means. Frankly, it'd be impossible to be bored with Cataclysm Paladin. But I simply just want to try some different things because when I was weighing up against the classes that are in contention, I found I wanted to play them more. It will be a new kind of adventure. So, yeah, the Paladin will be sitting Cataclysm out. That leaves us with only 3 classes, so you can guess what I've picked. However, up to now, there's been no particular order to anything, but that changes here. We'll go from my 3rd pick all the way to my 1st. So, the third pick then, Rogue. I said it in the last video, it was a pretty high contender. I want to play one and actually play it, and I have no problem with any of the 3 specs on offer. Again, would rather be a Daggers Rogue, but I will play combat without issue. The class is very much uncharted territory for me, and I know for a fact I will not be playing Mr. Pandaria if Blizzard decide to take things that far. Cata for me is the cutoff point for rehashing old expansions, so it is kind of my last chance to get the Rogue in, assuming they don't give us something else after Cata. And apart from my desire to go around shanking everything being a pretty big factor here, it does just feel good to play. Assassination in particular is a spec that I get a lot of joy out of, and it should have no issue performing decently well in what is to come. The utility toolkit on a Rogue is also pretty good. You've got Tricks of the Trade, Cloak of Shadows, an array of poisons for different situations. I like being able to go off and do the finicky tasks, as it were, in a boss fight. Rogues are generally pretty well supplied to be able to do such things, and are just pretty solid on their own. I'm confident in the Rogue's ability to wander off and go play a game of cultist-themed Tetris if needs be, and that is a really big selling point because I don't like being restricted by things as trivial as needing other people. Obviously, if I pull boss aggro, I'm going to get squished, but other than that, I should be good to go and annoy some ads in a far-off corner or something. And yeah, that's what I like doing in a fight, so Rogue has a lot of pluses. The number 2 slot, and this will give away my top contender as well, but what can you do? The Death Knight. Yes, my current main, he has been downgraded to silver. By no means is that a bad thing for the class. In fact, I technically like the DK more in Cata than I do in Wrath, because I am very much willing to play Unholy this time round. But yeah, I am just really happy with all 3 specs. Frost is definitely still my favourite where DPS is concerned, but Blood is a spec I love so much more in Cata than I do in Wrath. Not saying Blood is bad in Wrath, it isn't, it's strong and I do enjoy it, but the optimal specs for Blood tend to lack a lot of the fun buttons, and you need to wait until something is actively hitting you to use things like Rune Strike, for example. But with that no longer being the case, and there being more buttons to press, it just feels like I'm actually doing rather than waiting when it comes to that spec. So yeah, really looking forward to playing Blood as well. And the utility for a DK is pretty solid too. They will come with a battle res. They've got Chains of Ice. Death Grip is an invaluable tool to have on tap, and much like the Rogue, they are steadfast on their own 2 feet and can wander off and just do solo tasks. And it might be a bit of an ironic pick because I elected to not go with Shaman or Paladin because of the history of those characters and classes. Thing is, unlike with the Shaman, I have never once gotten bored with DK, and whilst it is my long-suffering main on retail, continuing to play it in Classic is still exciting for me. I want to take my dearly beloved through Blackwing Descent, Throne of the Four Winds, Firelands, and so on. I want to sink my rune blades into the skulls of anything that dare look at me funny. And the thing is, I know I can play DK. If things don't work out with the Rogue or my first pick for whatever reason, they sure as hell will when I'm on my DK. I just can play it. It's that simple. I know the buttons. It's muscle memory even when they go through all of their changes. So I am always safe in the hands of the DK. That leads us to numero uno. It is the Mage. I think that might have been a bit obvious from my reaction to Fire in the last video. It's just too good to pass up. It is possibly the most fun I've had in WoW in quite a while, so I definitely want to pursue that. But unlike with the previous 2 classes, I'm only concerned with 2 specs here because, again, Frost isn't really even on the same planet as Arcane and Fire. It is the PvP spec, so I haven't got to worry about it. I'm really happy with Fire and Arcane, and I'm just looking forward to blowing stuff up as a wizard for once. And the toolkit for mages outside of Simple Murder is also pretty good. You've got Polymorph and Frost Nova for CC, Ice Block if you want to soak something, and I will just never feel useless with this class, and I'd always be happy to put my hand up and go, yeah, I'll do that random thing that needs doing. The only downside really for mages is that they are glass cannons. They are made of wet cardboard, and if the boss even so much as looks at them funny, they keel over. But that aside, it's a pretty solid pick. So, those are the 3 I will be presenting to the powers that be when the time comes. Mage in top spot, followed by DK, and then the Rogue. However, there is a bit of a caveat to all this. As I said in the first video on this topic, my guild has a rule wherein if you are playing a class/spec at the end of an expansion and you wish to continue doing so into the next, you get priority. At the moment, my guild has something like 4 mages in the main team, and unless a couple of them leave or re-roll in Cata, the chances of me actually getting in as a mage aren't very high. I'm aware of that fact, and it is a bit of a shoot-your-shot kind of deal because I might get lucky. But in the very likely event I don't get mage, my second pick is then looked at. Since it's my DK, that's a guaranteed yes, it's my current main, and I am very much looking forward to playing it in Cataclysm. But I'd still get my mage on the weekend, which I can live with. But if I get lucky and I'm given the thumbs up for it in the main team, happy days for me. And you might also be wondering, hold on, didn't you say you wanted to multi-roll? Why, yes I did, and I thought about it a great deal whilst going through this process, and ultimately, I just had more fun on the rogue and mage, and that is one of the biggest factors for me at the end of the day. And you might also be wondering, hold on, didn't you say you wanted to multi-roll? Why, yes I did, and I thought about it a great deal whilst going through this process, and ultimately, I just had more fun on the rogue and mage, and that is one of the biggest factors for me at the end of the day. And the only time not being able to tank or heal might be overly problematic is when I'm doing 5 mounts and what have you. But with how that content is consumed these days via the RDF, it'll only really affect my queue times. It'll probably be a disaster regardless of what I'm playing. And it is content that I'm probably going to prefer doing with me guildies and my mates anyway, because Cata Titan Rune RDF is a series of words that wakes me up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat. So, yeah, I'm not too fussed, really. Anyway, those are my picks for mains in Cataclysm. Let me know your own thoughts down below. If you're so kind as to like, sub, share with your pals and so on, that'll be grand. Have a good one, folks. Bye for now.